fitting that we're sitting in a circle getting a chance to talk to you, because when we found out that we were going to get to meet you and discuss this book that touched each of us so deeply, it was the concept of a strong circle of women. And I was just kind of wondering, for you in this book, did you set out to highlight that, or was it those like cheese toast moments when you finally got a chance to breathe that you started realizing that that was a theme?
The first two sections of the book were the easiest to write. Those were the sections that I knew had to be, because when you are working with a publisher, you never know what they want, right? And there's always the temptation for people to think they want the sexy part of what being a first lady is all about, just all of the White House years. And for me, with the assignment as a box checker of writing a book, I was like, well, if I'm gonna talk about me, then I have to talk about me. And those first two chapters are me. That is the story. You know, the 8 years in the White House, that's sort of like, and then that happened, right? But it's for all of us. Our foundation are those stories, the little things that particularly we as women think are nothing. You know, we tend to write off those little moments that stick with us as not meaningful, because it's just us and I'm just a kid and we aren't rich, and these traditions, they must not be special, or the things we talk about around the dinner table, you know, we don't have a context for even thinking that that's important. But for me, because I had to do so much transitioning, or I did so much, I found that I had to explain myself in ways, because when you leave a corporate law position and a lot of money, after getting a debt, getting your law degree, people are going to be like, well, what'd you do that for? And so and then the next thing I did was you go run a nonprofit. You know, everything I did was sort of like, okay, that's the next thing you want to do. It wasn't on a clear trajectory that made sense. So I had to dig deep within me to figure out, well, why do I want to make this move? How am I going to explain this to the world, that I've walked away from all of this to do service and to work with kids? How do you explain that? Because that's not the path that we're supposed to go on. So I had done a lot of reflecting just to be able to explain myself, especially when I was working with public allies and talking to young people who wanted to pursue careers in public service against all that their parents understood. You know, I used my story to help them understand my logic. When I had to campaign for my husband in Iowa, you know, what's this big tall black woman from the south side of Chicago? How am I going to relate to folks who may not see themselves in me? Well, I gotta tell them my story. I gotta unfold myself for them. So those two chapters, those sections were clearly what had to happen. You know, because from my experience, that's what we miss. We miss that our stories are important. And we also miss it because I also realized how rare it was for a woman who's relatively young, who's a minority, who's high profile, how rare it is that she gets to tell her own story in a way that millions will read. So when we think about the stories that we see, you know, we're understanding this in media and television, how rare it is that the woman's story is told, let alone told by her. So I wanted to tell it, right? I didn't want to tell what was expected. I wanted to tell it all, because I felt like having it out there, I knew my story wasn't unique. I knew it was going to resonate. But the fact of the matter is, can you think of the books that you can read of living women who you will pick up and read en masse, where millions and millions of people will read the book and hear that story? So I don't know that it's new because we don't get to do it, but it's not new because it's new. This is us. This is who we are. I'm just the bearer of that truth. That I knew was my responsibility in this book.